Hello and welcome to Insight Interview. I am happy to have you here today with us. And this is Insight Interview brought to you by Vibrational Change from Victim to Victor. And today's interview is a very special one. We have Jennifer Phelps with us, and she is the queen of organization. And she's going to share with us many tips on how to have our space much more improved so we're much better at processing and getting things done. Now, Jennifer has quite a background and has had quite a journey to get to where she is today. Nothing just comes to us just like out of the blue and provides us with the skills and the intelligence and the wisdom that we need. Jennifer has had a lifelong background in her story, which I'm going to have tell us herself. Now, Jennifer, I would like you to tell us your story about how you got into just the whole arena of organization. Jennifer, welcome. I'm happy to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is really fun. I'm excited to be here with you. And it's been sort of a circuitous route for me. So I lived a young bohemian life, which was awesome, where I owned practically nothing, which was really great. I guess it sort of got me acclimated to my relationship with stuff. That had nothing to do with my life for such a long time. I was in a nonprofit world. I was in the world of sort of an alternative or complementary healing modality that involved touch and the concept of, self-awareness and how becoming aware of ourselves, our habits, our thoughts, had an impact on our healing, right? I didn't know that would show up in this phase of my life also. Anyway, my life went tootling along in that vein. And then, like many people, one day that all changed suddenly, dramatically, and completely. So I lost my mate, my home, my job, my community, all at once. And
wow.
I said, holy schmolies, what am I going to do now? But, you never know what you're being trained for. My ex and I had several rental properties that fell into our lap that I didn't own, but they fell into our lap and I was managing them and running them and fixing them. And I loved it. And so in January of 2008, when the economy was crummy and there were no jobs, I said, I'm going to be a solopreneur and open a home repair company. That's what I did. I can't believe I did it, but I did. And so I just began working not only with repairing spaces, but with making them beautiful, designing them, and then really working with homeowners to organize. And really the organizing came to the top because for me, it became about relationship with your space. And all of a sudden, all of that awareness about all of my experience with self-awareness and observation and our relationship to our space and our stuff just really became important to me, working with professional women who go to workshops and get all geared up to feel fantastic. And then they walk in their door and are crushed because their home or their office is just full of negativity. And I said, that is where I want to be. I want to help women in the nest and help them feel good about themselves.
Oh,
that's where I am today.
You're in the right place with me because I work out of my home and I have an office space that's absolutely lovely in terms of what I have, but I multi-function in the space. Obviously, I'm doing this camera video and inside interview from this space. I do my podcasting from the space, as I was telling you, and I do my writing for my authorship from this space, and I do everything I do.
What don't you do in this space?
That's right. I do everything from this space. So tell me, and let me tell you, my entire what I do for a living with coaching and hypnotherapy is really almost all of it is done online. So
Mm-hmm.
most everything is computer related or technology related. So when it comes to paper, paper is like my enemy, and there is paper everywhere. You can't get any
I
thicker
know.
in here. You think of shoveling snow? Well, I shovel paper. So I would like for you to talk to us about how my space affects your process and erasing that negativity and the stories that make the room for the life I really want. Okay, Jennifer? That'd
That's
be great.
that's our whole topic today is talking about that. So I don't know if you want to start with our first little question there, but really a lot of professional women, their office is exactly like you said. So your home or your office, but speaking about offices specifically, and especially if that professional woman is a mom, because her office tends to be the place, especially working a home office mom, everything in the family ends up in her office.
Mm-hmm.
There's no boundaries, there's no parameters, and even if we have our own offices, our personal work and our professional work, our home bills and our business bills, all of that become entangled in a space, and that becomes harder for us to really focus and manage. But where I come in is really, which we'll talk about, is really what's the relationship, because it's really about creating and understanding the blurry lines so that we can create different parameters in which we can operate more clearly. So that's really where I come in on the organizing.
So what I'm hearing you say is, just like in life with our relationships with other people, there's boundaries and we have boundary issues. And so what you're saying is that really what it comes down to is what our next, I'm going to put up here the next bullet point, which is your stuff in your story. And we have some entangled storyline with our stuff. So tell us more about that.
Well, people say, it's really funny, people say stuff is just stuff, and yet stuff is never just stuff. It's both. This lives in a dichotomous experience with us, because on the one hand we think, this cup is just a cup, it's not anything else, right? And yet our entire environment tells our story. So for example, it's memories of good things, bad things, experiences, accomplishments, and failures. So for example, we might have an award on the wall, but the clutter on our desk tells us of our failings, right? So we're always looking at this and saying, if I were more organized, I would be able to accomplish my papers, right? Or maybe we live in a space that reminds us of a divorce. Maybe we had an illness and our closet reminds us of things, or say a profession that we had, that our clothes in our closet remind us of when we were professional and could buy nicer clothes. And now we have all of those in the closet that we never wear. So whenever we get ready in the morning, the story, as we're just picking out clothes, is of all these phases of our life, all of the sizes we have been, and how we don't exercise, or how we ate that ice cream yesterday. And so the story in our stuff is really inseparable. And so that's where I like to come in, because not just moving stuff around, but really getting a sense of the story that it's telling you. And that's what I invite people to do, is really look around at each thing and say, what does that remind me of in my life? And so just starting that from a neutral point is, what is the story that these things or MySpace reminds me of? And then we get into evaluating that a little bit later.
Yeah, I just had an aha.
Oh, good.
Yeah, this is good. This is really good. And it's something probably most people, well, I don't know. I'll just put it out there. I was working as a hospital administrator, and I had an assistant who kept my papers filed, so I didn't have to do any of that. And she was excellent at it, by the way. Very, very, very good. And I kept my desk very clean, and my credenza behind me very clean. And you could walk into my office and it looked like it was ready for someone new to walk in and replace me. Well, my boss, I only took out one thing at a time and worked on it. And then when I was done with that, I put it back. And so my time was very carved for whatever focus I had at that moment. And at that time, I was on several different national boards, and I had huge, huge responsibilities that covered multiple areas. And what's so fascinating about it was I am saying there was nothing on my desk, and my boss came in and he resented it, because when you walked into his office, he had mounds and mounds of papers. He had them even stacked on the floor. And he was so upset. He thought I wasn't doing anything. And
well, there's a projection of his own inadequacy.
It was like upside down, turned upside down. And so now I'm wondering if I'm keeping my desk messy.
Well, you'll just you'll chew on that for a little bit.
I am really having to think about that, because I am a caregiver for my father, and my father is in his life was a professional engineer, and he had his own business, and he was like I was when I was working as a hospital administrator. He kept everything really neat, and so he's always like, if you would just file that paper right when you touch it, only touch it one time, it would be fine. So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think that probably brings us to the next. I mean, I think you've made a natural segue to our next point, really, because when I say, for me, why is it important to address your space when you're dealing with healing your life and your personal life, as well as being a successful professional? What you're talking about is exactly right. So I would say, looking at your office and your papers, right? So papers are an issue for you, but that can't be separated from the fact that you have the story about your job and all of the triggers that the paper on the desk has for you, plus the fact that your life, you're a caregiver. That's a big deal. You don't have the same kind of smooth, easy assistant. Your time is yours to focus on one thing. All of that is relevant to your relationship to your stuff. In your world, it shows up as the papers, which has a story, right? So for me, that's important. I could come in and just organize your paper, but the story and what's happening in your life is important. And so I feel like that is why I want to look at that in people's lives, because brain scientists tell us that Eastern philosophers have told us this for hundreds of years, but now Western brain scientists tell us that in the blink of an eye, our brains register and process everything in the scope of our eyes. That is a lot of work. So because we're also emotional being, well, this makes sense. The red shiny thing, was that food? That leaf moving, is that a tiger going to eat us? Right? So we're wired to process everything. Now, though, we're also emotional beings. So not only are we processing every piece of something finished in our space, but we're also emotional beings and we have an emotional response to it. So I feel it's important to address our space because it helps us unravel our story, and it also helps free our energy that's occupied with clutter and negative reminders in our environment. It clears that so we have more energy for our healing. It's sort of a chicken and the egg. Our environment prompts the healing, and by processing the environment, it helps our inner healing. So it's internal, external, internal, external. And so that's why I like to look at the space in conjunction with our personal healing and enhancing our professional success.
Yeah.
That's how I would say. Yeah.
I do believe, yeah, the two are so connected, and being empathetic to an individual's story and how it's being expressed and how they're living it out, which is their space, is such a great connection. And the work that you do, I just honor it so much, for you to be able to embrace the person and be where they are and be able to address them, that person, where they're at, and help them process and move through, coach them through that point to a place that feels better and more comfortable. And like you said, a more healing space where they can thrive instead of just survive.
Exactly. And I say that your environment is a primary relationship. What's the first thing you see when you open your eyes and the last thing you see when you close your eyes is the space you occupy. And either it is supporting you, encouraging you, reflecting your best self, or it's holding you back, embarrassing you, making you feel bad about yourself. I can't have friends over because you embarrass me. I can't have clients because you don't make me feel successful. And if you're having that conversation with your environment, it's like a bad romantic relationship, and you need to work on that. Yeah. So I'll say it's a primary relationship, and we have to treat it as such.
I believe what you're saying there really will hit home with our viewers who are watching our show today. And you do take a holistic view when you're working with your clients, right, Jennifer?
Yeah, I have what I call a 4-tier signature process. So as we've mentioned, I talk about your stuff, but also your story. What's the context in which you're living? And we work accordingly with the stuff. Also, though, the space, say the flow, the systems, what really works for you and your architecture and your space and your lifestyle. And then your vision, really, because rearranging a room that you intend to in a year turn around to, say, I'm working with a young couple and they're going to turn it into the baby's room. We don't want to fill that with an office. We want to leave that space open. So again, it's your stuff, your story, your space, and your vision, because that's the context in which I like to work. And that will give you the best results.
Yeah, that's really a great signature program. That's really, really great. So let's back up for a moment, and I'd like to be able to hit on, well, before we go there, let's talk about the clutter.
Oh, yeah.
And negative stories and what they're costing. What is the cost? I mean, there's always the cost, and sometimes if we skip over that, then we really don't understand the impact that it's having on us and why it's so important to make the shift.
Yeah, and I say clutter generally, but it doesn't have to be big piles of stuff. We're not even talking about walls of tchotchkes. Anything that's not serving us in our environment can be considered clutter because it can be distracting us from what's important. So we're talking about time, energy, money, attention, and confidence. All of those are things that cost us. I have an entire 45-minute presentation about the statistics of how many hours we spend looking for things. And then, so say we're looking for our keys or that folder for the client, and we're scrambling to find that on our way out the door. And then we show up and we're with a filer. You're scrambling to get out the door, and then you arrive at the client and you're flustered, right? Rather than feeling comfortable and calm, right? And think about all the time you spend going to Costco to repurchase and spend money on things you know you have extra, but you can't find it, right? So it's time and money, right? And the energy we spend running around. But then also it's our confidence, because we look around the room and we might be a rock star out there, and we look then at our mess and our piles at home and say, oh my gosh, I am an imposter, I'm a fraud, and all of those things that entrepreneurs experience naturally is compounded when our space is not helping us be efficient and effective. Let me say, I'm not talking about perfection. That's another unrealistic expectation that costs us also, but we want to make sure that our space helps us be our very best in that. And so that's what I say. So the way it affects us personally and professionally are entwined that way. So time, money, stress, our health, and confidence are all ways that it costs us.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'd like to add, for example, I have a client who her house is perfect. It's absolutely perfect. But that's one of the problems with it. She created that perfect house with her husband and the life they used to have. She got the house, but she also got to keep all the memories. So it's not just about clutter. It's about the space itself and what it reminds you of. And so, again, it's not just clutter. It's the space and how you feel that costs you.
Yeah, I have to say that for me now at this age, I'm in a new phase in my life right now. And when we took my parents' belongings and split them among us, I had several small items from my family, and I'm now just getting to the point where I'm sorting through that and eliminating. And it gets very complicated, I have to say, because there's the emotion, and then you have to just say, just release it. And then also you're talking about the past relationship with your husband, and there is
or parents
has to take
or
place
children,
that particular individual. There is a lot that happens, like you say, that if like our past jobs, if there's something related to that. I know it's interesting you say that, because I have slacks in my closet that I had to buy when I worked at the Miller Coors Wellness Center, because it was more appropriate to wear slacks than it was a skirt, and I'm a skirt person. But anyway, I bought like 4 or 5 pairs of slacks, and they're still hanging there. I have never worn them, and it's like, why do I still have them? I mean, it's like out.
One thing I like to say is, and I guess this kind of is our next little piece too, is it's, if we're determining what supports us and what's holding us back. For example, the example of the slacks is great. So slacks in and of themselves, neutral. Who cares? How much space do they take up? Maybe 8 inches of hanger space. However, However, your brain sees those slacks and tells your story somewhere in your brain. It's going through that. It can't help but do that every time you just see them. And now here's the thing. You're in a new phase in your life. You have your parent stuff, you have the grief, you have all of these things that you're going through, and those slacks, that apparently neutral 8 inches of hangers is your past. So literally, your past is taking up space, and you need room to grow. You need room to be who you are today, and you need room to grow into who you're becoming in every phase of our life until we draw our last breath. There is some room we need to make for growth and what's next. And I say, if our space is literally full of our past, there is no room for who we are now and who we're becoming. So I empower you to dump those slacks.
They'll be out.
See what else. see what exciting new scarf you get for your live process.
Right. Thank you for this interview. This is great. That is a great example. Well, what about creating space that reflects my best self?
Right. And I think it really, all of the things that I've talked about, first of all, is figuring out what is the story that each of these things tells you. What's the overall story, the encompassing story, and then the individual items that are filling our space, the lanyards from the conference in 1999 that's accumulating dust. You don't need that hanging on your oak bookshelf that you've had since college. Looking at things differently, touch things that have been sitting on the shelf in the same place for 10 years. Just look and touch, put them in your hands, see how they feel to you, and remove those things that are neutral or negative. You may want to put them in a box just for now. I give you permission to have a transition time. I encourage you to let them completely go. And even if you have sort of a blank slate once you're done with this, that gives you an emotionally uncluttered space to discern who you are and who you want to be. Because you can recreate your space with a tiny budget if you want to. You'll decide if you need organizing help, a little design help, and really encourage yourself to surround yourself with things that remind you of your best self, that make you feel like a rock star, and help you feel like you can help your clients and your family the best. That's what we want. We want it to reflect our best self. We want to make those positive stories and not the negative stories.
Right.
And we want it to work, right? We don't want all that paper. So efficiency and productivity is an outcome of clearing the space of the negative. It makes space for us to be efficient.
Right. And being our best self and reflecting, our best self, just who it is that we really are. Jamie chimed in here. This is great. She says, I have seen an old pile of old magazines to the recycle bin. My husband never even missed them. Yeah, isn't that true? Sometimes things like that really happen, where you just take it out and you remove it and it's never even missed. I have a funny story about that. I had put some things in a box many years ago, and I moved. Somehow I was in the process of moving, or they got over to someone else's house, and I finally decided I needed to get over there and pick them up. She said, I got rid of them. She said, you forgot about them. She said, you haven't talked about it, so I got rid of them. And I thought,
oh my gosh. Well, you were liberated from that decision making.
That's exactly right. Oh, it's so funny.
One less thing to think about.
That's right. So Jennifer, we've come to a time where we need to know how to get a hold of you. How does one person reach you to get you to speak?
I am happy to chat with someone. I have a 25-minute little free phone call. People can go to my scheduler on my website, jenniferphelps.org for organize, and find a time that works for them. If there's a time that doesn't, if they don't find a time that works, they can email me or call me. And if someone wanted to work with me on a specific area, say a messy desk or, your office or processing, a system, I am offering a special to your viewers. So I have something called the Hot Spot Redux, which is where we turn that hot spot into a sweet spot for you. And the special I'm offering is 3 months of follow-up with me, the hotline access to me. So helping with support, follow-up questions, and accountability to help you in the next 3 months to continue in that process and maybe encourage you to embrace the process in a new part of your life also. So the Hotspot Redux with 3 months free of access to me by phone and email.
Hotspot Redux to make it a sweet spot. I love that.
That's great.
Cool. I think I need to jump in there and be in there with you, Jennifer.
Awesome.
I have really exposed myself and been very vulnerable in this interview, and it has liberated me to be able to just freely put it out there to you and say, well, I'm in there with all the viewers that have joined us today, and I thank each and every one of you for being with us and with Jennifer, our special guest. She has been
Thank you.
Really a charm and a delight and full of wisdom about how to create our space. So not only is it productive, but it also reflects our best self. And that's exactly what we want, is a space that really is our best self so that we can be in a healing and supportive space and feel good and great.
That's right.
So Jennifer, I really want to thank you for being with us today, and thank our audience
Tracy,
for being with us. Yes, thank you. With that, I'd like to end our broadcast for today and tell you that we will see you next week and with another special guest. And thank you so much. Be well.